Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, lived by a truth that many ignore today. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice. In a world obsessed with being right, Stoicism teaches us the quiet power of restraint. Here's why you should never argue, especially if you seek mastery over your mind and life. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. These words from Marcus Aurelius cut through noise like a sword through smoke. Arguments, more often than not, are less about truth and more about performance. We argue not to discover what is right, but to prove we are right. In the heat of debate, ego slips into the driver's seat, steering the conversation towards self-importance rather than understanding. The goal becomes victory, not wisdom, and in that we lose the very essence of reasoned dialogue. When we feel the urge to argue, it's often because our identity feels threatened. Someone disagrees with us, and suddenly it's not just our idea under attack, it feels like our worth, our intelligence, even our morality. This emotional hijacking transforms what could have been a calm exchange into a personal war zone. Stoicism teaches that truth does not require defense through aggression. If something is truly wise, it can stand on its own, unshaken by criticism. The truth is quiet, not because it's weak, but because it's rooted in clarity. It has nothing to prove. Marcus Aurelius didn't spend his energy on trying to convince others through debate. He spent it on refining his own behavior, on mastering his impulses, on embodying virtue. He knew that what speaks louder than arguments is how you live. Every time you respond with grace instead of hostility, every time you choose to act rather than to boast, you place a stone on the foundation of real character. Your life becomes the argument, and no one can refute the calm force of an example lived fully. Arguments are often loud, dramatic, and performative, but the Stoic man doesn't perform. He lives with intention. In a world obsessed with who speaks loudest, Stoicism whispers a powerful alternative. Don't argue to prove who you are. Just be who you are. Let your life make the case. Emotional reactivity, especially in the face of provocation, is not a sign of strength. It is a clear indication of inner weakness. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He wrote, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." The Stoics believed that true power lies not in how loudly you can respond, but in how little you allow others to shake your peace. When you react impulsively to criticism, insults, or disagreement, you hand over your inner power to someone else. You become a puppet dancing to the strings of their provocation, and for what? A fleeting moment of satisfaction that vanishes as quickly as it came, often leaving behind regret and unrest. When someone lashes out at you, challenges your belief, or mocks your values, your first instinct might be to defend yourself, to fight back, to restore your honor through words or confrontation. But ask yourself, who really wins in that moment? The person who controls your emotional state, or the one who keeps theirs intact? Stoicism teaches that restraint is not passivity, it's discipline. It's the mature recognition that you are not obligated to participate in every conflict simply because it's been offered to you. Reacting emotionally often clouds judgment. It drags you into irrational behavior, fuels further conflict, and breaks your composure. The Stoic man, the man who practices mastery over self, recognizes these moments as tests. He does not suppress emotions. He understands them, studies them, and then chooses not to let them rule his actions. There is great dignity in silence, especially when the world expects you to explode. It shows that you are the one in control, not your anger, not your pride, not your fear. Marcus Aurelius faced insults, betrayal, and endless political pressure, yet his journal *Meditations* reveals a mind consistently returning to calm. He didn't deny the existence of negative emotions. He acknowledged them and then reminded himself that he could rise above them. That is the essence of Stoic strength, not the absence of emotion, but the absence of slavery to emotion. To not be a creature of impulse, but a craftsman of deliberate response. When others lose themselves in anger, you remain grounded. When they shout, you listen. When they seek war, you maintain peace. Not because you are weak, but because you are unbreakable. Arguing is often mistaken for influence, but Marcus Aurelius and the Stoics knew better. They understood that the most persuasive force in the world is not spoken. It is demonstrated. Words can be twisted, misinterpreted, dismissed. But results, real, life outcomes, cannot be argued with. A calm and steady life lived with integrity becomes irrefutable proof of strength and wisdom. It doesn't ask for attention. It commands it silently. When you live well, you don't need to explain yourself. You become undeniable. Most arguments are circular. Two people locked in combat, not to understand but to dominate. But Stoicism teaches that power lies in action, not opinion. The Stoic doesn't waste breath trying to convince others of his worth. He simply builds a life that reflects it. He knows that every moment spent arguing could have been used for building discipline, character, or excellence. Instead of debating values, he lives by them. Instead of announcing what he stands for, he lets his behavior do the talking. And over time, that consistency earns more respect than any spoken rebuttal ever could. When you act with intention, when your habits reflect your principles, people notice. They may not say it out loud, but they see the difference. In a world full of loud voices, the quiet presence of a man who embodies self, control, humility, and discipline becomes magnetic. He doesn't have to win arguments. His life is the evidence. His results silence critics better than any clever phrase ever could. And when others try to provoke him, to drag him into petty disputes, he simply continues forward, unaffected. He knows that success is the sharpest response, and peace is the deepest power. Words can win a moment, but results win a lifetime. The Stoic doesn't chase temporary victories in heated debates. He aims for mastery, of himself, of his time, of his impact. While others are distracted by the noise of needing to be right, he builds in silence, and that quiet construction of a disciplined life leaves a mark no argument ever could. One of the central teachings of Marcus Aurelius, and of Stoicism as a whole, is the distinction between what is within our control and what is not. You cannot control what others think, say, or believe. You cannot control their behavior, their emotions, or their decisions, but you can always control yourself, your thoughts, your actions, your responses. The moment you forget this truth, you begin to suffer unnecessarily. You get caught in the exhausting trap of trying to shape the world around you instead of mastering the world within you. Arguments often arise from the false belief that if you just explain yourself well enough or raise your voice loud enough, you can change someone else's mind. But Marcus Aurelius would remind you that even the most logical argument cannot move someone who isn't ready to listen. You might spend your energy defending your values, correcting misinformation, or trying to win someone over, but in doing so, you may neglect the only battlefield that truly matters, your own mind. Trying to change others is not just unproductive, it's a misuse of your power. The Stoic path is about radical ownership. It's about returning again and again to the one place where your influence is absolute, your internal state. You are responsible for your reactions, your judgments, your focus. When you argue, you often leave that grounded space. You shift from being the master of yourself to trying to manage someone else's chaos. But their anger, ignorance, or misunderstanding is not your responsibility. Your only duty is to remain composed, rational, and aligned with your principles. There is great strength in knowing what you can control. It frees you from unnecessary suffering. It allows you to move through the world without becoming entangled in every emotional storm that others bring. You begin to see arguments not as invitations but as distractions. You recognize that peace is not found by winning a fight, but by refusing to be drawn into one in the first place. You keep your mind still, not because the world is calm, but because you've trained it to be. That is the Stoic advantage, the ability to maintain your inner fortress no matter how loud the chaos outside becomes. Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal, corruption, and relentless opposition during his rule. Yet he wrote not about defeating his enemies, but about conquering himself. He didn't waste time trying to change the unchangeable. He focused on being just, patient, and wise. That's where real control begins, not in forcing others to agree with you, but in staying true to your character, no matter what they do. Inner peace is one of the highest forms of wealth a person can possess, and yet it is the first thing most people are willing to sacrifice when they feel challenged, offended, or disrespected. Marcus Aurelius and the Stoics knew that peace of mind is not something given. It is something cultivated, and it is fragile. Arguing, especially out of pride or ego, disrupts that peace. It pulls you out of alignment with yourself and drags you into a space where your energy is no longer your own. Every time you engage in a meaningless debate, you are essentially renting out space in your mind to someone who doesn't live with your values. When you argue, your mind becomes chaotic, thoughts race, emotions flare, the body tenses, the nervous system kicks into fight mode, and suddenly you're no longer acting with wisdom. You're reacting out of impulse. That momentary rush of anger or righteousness might feel powerful, but it robs you of the clarity and calm that Stoicism treasures. Peace isn't about avoiding conflict altogether. It's about choosing which conflicts are worth your energy, and most arguments, when viewed through the lens of reason, simply aren't. The Stoic sees this clearly. He understands that his inner world is sacred, and that not every provocation deserves a response. There is a silent strength in walking away, not because you are weak, but because you are guarding something more valuable than pride, your tranquility. The Stoics often referred to the concept of ataraxia, a state of serene calm, unaffected by external turbulence. Arguing shatters that state. It stirs up the soul. It distracts from the present moment and from the work of becoming better, wiser, more composed. People often equate silence with defeat, but the Stoic knows otherwise. Silence, when chosen consciously, is a declaration of self-possession. You are not avoiding the fight. You are choosing a higher standard for yourself. You are refusing to be pulled down into the mud where nothing good can grow. There is a profound dignity in the man who can remain calm while others try to provoke him. That kind of man radiates control, and that control is born from a deep commitment to inner stillness. Marcus Aurelius ruled over an empire, yet he never sought to control every voice that criticized or opposed him. Instead, he returned again and again to himself. He asked, "Is what I'm doing in harmony with my nature? Is it just, rational, necessary? If it was, then no argument could add or subtract from its value. He knew that peace wasn't found by defeating others in conversation, but by defeating the need to prove anything at all. That's where real power lives, in the silence you choose, in the calm you protect. There is a deeply ingrained misconception in modern society that walking away from a confrontation is an act of weakness, a sign that you've lost or that you're afraid to stand your ground. But Marcus Aurelius and the Stoic philosophers knew better. Walking away is not about surrendering to another person. It is about refusing to surrender to your lower self. It is not about letting others win the argument. It is about choosing not to lower yourself to a level of emotional chaos where nothing constructive can come from the exchange. The ability to walk away without feeling the need to defend your pride is not a flaw. It is a rare form of emotional intelligence and spiritual maturity. To walk away is to master the moment. It means you have assessed the situation, recognized its futility, and chosen to preserve your dignity instead of feeding the fire. Most people argue because they are controlled by their impulses. They need to be right, to be heard, to be validated. But the Stoic man has no such dependency. His sense of self does not hinge on the approval of others. He does not need to prove his strength. He knows it, and so he can walk away not out of fear but out of strength. He chooses stillness over noise, peace over pride. Walking away is not about silence. It's a statement. It says, I value my time, my energy, and my mind too much to waste them in fruitless combat. It says, I know who I am, and no insult or misunderstanding can alter that. When someone throws anger your way and you don't catch it, you return the power to yourself. You become untouchable. That is the Stoic ideal. Not the man who wins the argument, but the man who no longer needs one. The truth is, people remember how you carry yourself more than what you say. The man who keeps his composure while others lose theirs becomes the example. His silence becomes louder than their shouting. His calm presence leaves a deeper impression than their fury. Marcus Aurelius knew this. That is why he consistently reminded himself not to be reactive, not to mirror the ignorance or anger of others. The best revenge, he wrote, is to be unlike him who performed the injustice. That doesn't mean silence is passive. It means it is active self-control. It is a decision to rise above. To walk away is to understand the difference between battles worth fighting and distractions not worth your peace. It is to realize that not every opinion needs to be corrected, not every insult needs to be answered, and not every confrontation deserves your attention. The Stoic is not unfeeling. He simply feels deeply and yet chooses to remain steady. His pride is not in being loud, but in being unshakable. And in that quiet exit, he displays a kind of mastery that few will ever understand, but everyone will remember. So let them shout, let them provoke, let them misunderstand you. Your power lies not in silencing them, but in refusing to let them disturb your peace. Be like the rock against which the waves crash, still, unmoved, unbroken. In a world addicted to noise, be the one who leads in silence, because the highest form of strength is not in conquering others, but in conquering yourself. And when you choose to walk away, to stay calm, to rise above, it is not the argument you avoid that defines you, but the self you protect. That is the way of Marcus Aurelius. That is the way of the Stoic.